This is the demonstration drawing for colored pencil for the Architecture 1130 basic drawing class at Salt Lake Community College. What we're going to be doing tonight is the little house sketch, but using a lot of bright and vibrant colors in order to create a very energetic type of a drawing. What you will need for this assignment is just a piece of copy paper, just a blank piece of paper, and then the background that is posted as a PDF file to the assignment for the colored pencil assignment. And then you'll also need your colored pencils that are listed in the syllabus. So either the, again, I'm demonstrating the energetic sort of bright color scheme tonight, but if you have the earthy tones, that's okay. Also, you can just kind of follow along and use the similar colors. But we've basically got 9 pencils here that we're using: orange, yellow, purple, black, blue, a dark blue, a light blue, a dark green, a light green, and red. So one of the first things you want to do, as we've talked about in class, is that drawing basically has 4 basic steps to it, no matter what type of a drawing you're doing. The first step is to do a rough outline, construction drawing outline. This mimics the step when we're out sitting in front of a building or something that we're sketching, or if you're design sketching, then it's kind of those first, putting down some light lines as you start to think through what the building might look like, or just trying to get the shape, the scale, and the size correct in your drawing. The second step is to add some light tones, start building up the tones. Then you add pencil work and start to darken in those tones. And then the last step is to add details and the contrast that you need in your drawing in order to create depth to your drawing. So we're going to be following those steps, and I'll show you how to do that with the colored pencil. So for the first step of kind of doing the layout, you want to use a very light pencil. So I'm going to suggest either using your light blue or your lighter green color. Either one would do. I'm going to use green. I would not suggest using yellow. It's just too hard to see, and you want to at least be able to see the lines when you're done. So first step is to just again create just a very light background or outline, of the building or of your subject. So I'm just using my blue pencil here and just quickly kind of tracing this. So right now what tracing does for us again is that it allows us to quickly get an accurate representation of what we're trying to draw here without having to worry about scale and working through all of those issues at this point. It'll just kind of allow us a little quicker step in order to get into the drawing a little bit faster. So you want to be fairly accurate with this. Just trying to keep it all, the proportions right. Of course, the building itself is maybe the most important, so that looks correct. Trees tend to, be a little bit more organic feeling. So you can add a few more branches if you'd like to do that. You can add some leaves, things like that, as you go through and do this drawing. And what the drawing doesn't show is just some wispy clouds kind of in the sky, so I'm just going to add a few kind of like horizontal sort of wispy lines to kind of create a little bit of a sky feeling there that we'll fill in. So there's the light outline. Did that in my blue, as you can see there. Oops, lift that up and realize that I just need a couple little lines here to connect that to the ground plane. Okay, so there's my very light background or trace outline, construction line drawing. And so at that point I can take the background and put it to the side, and I don't need that anymore. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to start building up with some color. And we're going to be looking for some effects of color rainbow here in some areas, using color pair and color repeat. And then on the house, we'll use a little bit of color solid. Again, some of the techniques from the Mike Lynn book. So, but to start, I'm going to start off with my lightest color, which is yellow, and just come in here and just in a few places start to create a little bit of gradual value change here in my building. But again, most of this is going to disappear in the end, but what it does is it creates a nice sort of a palette or an underlay for your for the rest of the drawing as you kind of start building this up. So there's some of that in the background in the trees. Maybe just a little bit of yellow here in the foreground on the ground plane. Start thinking about some of that topo line, creating topography with the directionality of my pencil strokes. Okay, all right, so there's kind of my first little pass of some yellows. Let's throw a little bit in the sky in the background. All right, something maybe like that. Okay, and then maybe just a little bit on the tree trunk here. Okay, some areas even just a little bit darker than others. Okay, so then let's jump into the green here, and I'm going to use a little bit of that in the background on the trees. Again, starting to think about things like gradual value change. The underside of my trees are always going to be a little bit darker than the top side, so I make sure to add a little bit more there. I'm thinking about focal point that we talked about in one of our classes, so a little darker towards the center and fading it off as I get away from the center portion of my drawing. Alright, so I'm going to have a little bit of green in my ground plane also. Alright. So that kind of gets built up here. And then maybe just toss a little bit in the sky in a couple places. Again, we're just starting to build up the background tone, so be careful not to get too dark. So next thing, I'll go ahead and use my blue. So I'm going to create some blue here in the sky. And I like to use kind of a vertical stroke with my blue in the sky. And again, skies are typically blue, so this is gonna have quite a bit of blue in it, even as I just start out right here. And again, I'm not scribbling back and forth as I demonstrated in class. I'm actually lifting up my pencil each time that I create a stroke here, so that each one of those lines is its own sort of separate line. It's not just a scribbly. Right, so if I put a little bit of blue in the sky, then I'm going to get some of that reflected, so it's going to be a little bit of color repeat. Maybe just a touch in the trees, a little bit in the top part of the trees where it's reflecting, maybe a little bit in the building, touch right here on the roof maybe, and then maybe just a little bit in the ground plane, just to create a little bit there. Okay. So then my next color is again a lighter color, so I'm going to be using my orange here. And again, so orange is a good color pair for the blue. Now that we start thinking about that, so I'm going to put some of that color adjacent to where I have blue up here in the sky, and that'll kind of create that excitement, a little bit of energy in the sky. If you think about it at sunset, oftentimes you'll get a little bit of that lingering blue and orange just right at the sunset, time of the sunset. So, all right. So if I'm using a little bit of orange in the sky, then color repeat. So you're going to get a little bit of reflections of that color in the trees and on the ground plane. So I'll just throw a little bit of that orange in here in a couple places. All right, so there's just kind of that first pass at creating a very light tone tone and a start to my drawing, just kind of that base colors, and throw a little bit of that orange into the tree trunk also. That's what I'm doing. So I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it looks like a mess right now, right? But you'll see how this kind of comes together even at this stage. So if yours looks about like this, then you're on the right track. Okay, so those are kind of my 4 light colors. So now I'm going to switch over and I'm going to do a little bit of color solid in the building itself. So I'm switching to my red. Make sure that I have that nice chiseled edge, so I have a nice flat edge to be able to start working with. And I start to create a little bit of gradual value change as I come across this surface. Right, again, my light is coming from the upper right hand side, so that means that this side is going to be a little bit darker. All right, and because this is the side that's not receiving any direct sunlight. But again, it just has that little bit of gradual value change as we come across. So dark in that upper left side and lighter as we come down toward the opposite corner. And I can do the same here on the front of my building. And I'm starting dark in the lower right hand corner and lighter in the upper left hand as I come up over here. Just kind of does something like that. Okay, and what that does is it creates a light dark corner, so that right here at the corner of the building you can start to see it starts to have that contrast, creates a corner there. Okay, so that's kind of how I'm going to use color solid, but I've used a little bit of red there, so let's come and kind of do that color repeat in a couple places. With a little bit of red here and there. Okay, red's the color pair for green, so if you let those over mix each other, it's going to kind of give you a muted kind of a brown. If you put a little bit of green and red right next to each other, then they kind of excite each other and give a little bit more interest. So it's depending on how you've done that. Make sure that you're always leaving a little bit of white space so you can come back in later and add a little bit of color where you want it. To some of that whiter areas. If you fill everything in, then you don't have that opportunity to really kind of do that. All right, so there we go. There's a little bit of red added there. Okay, so at this point, the next color that I'm going to use is my dark green. And again, just get a little bit of a chisel point on that, and I'm going to focus kind of in on these trees in the background, right? Because trees are mostly green. At least they are for what I'm doing in this one. All right. So again, thinking a little bit of that color, focal point and colors and gradual value change, kind of how those either mix together or sit next to each other to kind of create some excitement in your drawing. So, and again, I'm lifting that pencil each time. I'm not just scribbling back and forth. I know sometimes that's kind of hard to tell as I'm drawing, but that's what I'm doing. Lifting that pencil every time. Came from quite a bit of practice to be able to do that without getting into too much scribbling. Okay, so now you can see how those trees are mostly green, but you can see a little bit of the red and that yellow still kind of coming through the back. So then also the ground plane, right? Grounds, we'll call this grassy areas. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing here. And again, creating some areas that are darker and some that are lighter, so I get that gradual value change as we come across here. But this is going to be mostly green. I often change my pressure of my pencil just to kind of help along that gradual value change a little bit quicker, keeping a very, very light touch in some areas, and then in other areas just giving it a little bit more pressure Just kind of speeds up the process just a little bit. And then maybe just down through here, a few more of those green areas. Okay, and let's just throw in a couple of, again with that color repeat, you can get a little bit of green into the skies here. All right, about like that. Okay, so that, now you can start seeing we're building up these colors just a little bit, and I think that's good for that first stage of just color, you know, getting the light colors in and kind of that first step. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my black pencil, and we're going to use this to create some of our line work. Okay, and so we're going to use things like hit, go, hit, professional gap, professional dot, like we've talked about in class. So here I just kind of start with those techniques. All right, so I've got professional, got some hit, go, hit going on, some professional gap, some professional dot, the overlap corner. All right, but I'm just going to use this. Again, not completely solid lines, and you want the lines to have some fuzzy light areas as well as some heavy dark areas. Just creates more interest in your drawings. All right. So there's kind of the first outline on that building. All right, and let's jump over to these background trees, and we'll do a little bit of variable line. So a little bit of line along the top, a couple along the bottom here to kind of get that going. And again, this is light pressure, and you're kind of twisting and turning your pencil as you go. Okay, lighter on the top, a little bit darker on the bottom, even as you're doing this kind of line work. So then along the ground plane in the back, just a little kind of a straighter type of a variable line there. So let's come in here, we're going to hit this tree trunk. Hit a little bit along this path here. We do a little bit of repeat line to soften that edge there, where the path and this area here kind of meet. And then right here, don't forget to do a little bit of line and a few little growies where that meets the where the house meets the ground plane. Okay. All right, so there's kind of some initial line work with the black pencil. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start building up some of those details and some of the rest of the colors. And so let's start with the house itself, right? And I'm going to create a little bit of gradual value change in this door plane, and I'm going to use the black here to do that. And the door and the window. Again, darker in the upper left-hand corner, right? And then if I create kind of a nice dark thick line again here, that starts to create some depth in that doorway. And then here at the window, let's kind of do the same thing. Again, dark on those two, just those two sides. Again, creates a little bit of depth there. Now I can come onto this surface here, and I'm going to use a little bit of my black to kind of just give that a little bit darker, gradual value change, just a little bit across there. And then right here under the eave, you can see what I'm doing there. Hope. Okay, so by doing that, I've got some nice value here with the black. Doing that, but I've lost some of the red as I did that. So let's come back to my red now and come in here, just go over the top of that a little bit. Okay, and you'll notice that kind of up in this area I'm starting to get pretty saturated with my pencil color. I'm not going to be able to put too much more value down there. It's pretty much filled up the entire page. So I'm going to stop right there and just give this a nice little dark line right there. Kind of help that stand out. Okay, so the next thing is so my light's coming in, as I said before, from the upper right hand side. So this is going to cast some shadows, so I can do a little bit of shadow just along that side, and then come along here and do a little bit of shadow right underneath there. Okay, and then now that that's a little darker, maybe I want to just darken up that Eve line just a little bit. Okay, so there's a little bit of that. Now I've got this big old white area here, and I'm going to have color around the outside. So I'm going to create just a little bit of value connect with that, and we've got a lot of yellow in the sky. So I can come along here and maybe just use a little bit of the yellow, something like that. Again, I just want to add a little bit of color to that. And then what else have we got in the sky? Maybe a little bit of this blue. And it kind of is reflecting down. But again, be careful. Blue and yellow make green. And I want this to have just a little bit of blue color to it. Okay. And then if I want to tone that down a little bit, so I can add a little bit of orange there to the blue, and it'll kind of make that a little brownish to our eyes, like that. Okay, so now that I've got that, you can see that there, then I can just add maybe just a little bit of this pencil and a couple of details here that kind of make it start to look like shingles. Okay, so there's kind of the buildup on that house. So let's work on these trees. So back to my black, and I'll start here. Again, using that 45-degree angle that we talked about, and just start building up some of the shade for this tree. Again, focusing on the underside with the black and creating some gradual value change, and then just a little bit of it along the top. So it kind of helps to connect that. Okay. And then come over to the left, and again do the same thing with my trees to the left hand side. Okay, so now that I've got that, let's switch back over to some of the greens, and we'll get this a little bit of green tone in here. Coming back in. All right, create this a little bit more of color solid with some of this green, and then use some of my dark green to do the same thing. Okay, so now that I've got that, I'm going to create a little bit of color, color rainbow, and maybe some color repeats. So let's kind of talk about the sky here for a second. And so let's say that up here in the sky, I want to create some nice orange color coming along here. Again, kind of thinking that time right before the sunset. I got some nice orange over here. Comes up into there, right? So again, if I've got a little bit of orange there, then I can kind of repeat that here in my trees. Give that kind of a nice, sort of a bright color. In just a few areas here. Right, just to kind of excite that a little bit. And then here in the ground plane, maybe I just throw down a little bit of orange down here. And I kind of get that color repeat happening. You can see that through the sky, the trees, and there. So then I come over here to the left, and again I've got some of that there, so let's just throw in a couple of splashes of kind of nice orange color in here, and then along the ground maybe just a little bit of nice orange right there. Okay, so that's a little bit of that color repeat, and again creates a little bit more excitement to our drawing. So the next thing that I want to work on is let's work on the sky. So let's come back to a little bit of our blues, and I'm going to create very much a kind of a color rainbow effect in the sky. So I'm using mostly my blues, but I can come in here and I'm just going to come in here and do this. Again, I'm going to leave some white spaces here and there, and where I just did that orange, I'm going to kind of avoid that a little bit so that that can stay, you know, very apparent that that's a nice orange color. Okay. Switch over to my dark blue now, and let's come in here and we're going to throw in some splashes of dark blue here and there. Okay, and then let's grab a little bit of purple here. I'm going to come in and throw in some purple in some of these areas and really kind of create this nice rainbow effect. Okay, so then with that color rainbow, let's come in and I'm going to get some more yellow in here, so it's a little bit brighter. Maybe there's a thread of that that kind of comes through a little bit like that. You can see how that yellow just kind of creates a really nice bright look. So there's the sky, and I've kind of got a little bit of everything going on, maybe a little bit more than I typically do, but let's play around with this just a little bit more. Really create some of this coming up from the bottom. Alright, I'm playing around with that too much. Okay, so now just kind of in here, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to kind of play with those little bit of wispy lines that come through here. Maybe just kind of tie that together a little bit. Right. So there's kind of my nice bright color rainbow sky going on there. Okay, so let's kind of use a little bit of color rainbow in the ground plane also. So I've got quite a bit of green and the yellow and stuff that I had in there. So let's just let's start with just a little bit of blue. I'm going to try to just create a couple splotches here of blue here and there. And maybe a little bit of purple. Along here a little bit too. Anyway, purple is one of those dominating colors, so you don't want to put too much on there. It'll kind of overtake everything else. Okay, so then, let's see, I want a couple splashes of red here and there. And then I'm going to come back with just a little bit of that green, and I'm going to use that green just as a little bit of value connect, again on this pathway, so that it's not too white compared to all the rest. Okay. And maybe just a touch of this dark green here. All right, so you can see kind of a lot of that color rainbow effect happening here. So the color pair to green is red. So if I kind of want to mute this and make it a little bit more of a brown color, I just come over here very lightly, very light touch, just add just a little bit of red over the top of that, and that'll kind of mute that down to a little bit more of a brownish color. You can kind of see that there. Okay, so you can see we're kind of getting this built up here. Let's work on the tree for just a second, and again use kind of that color rainbow technique. So I'm going to work on the tree trunk and just come here with just a little bit of purple, maybe a touch of blue, and maybe that's into some of these. A little bit of red. Some green. Red down here. And then a little bit of yellow. Mixed all that together. Alright, so then I'm going to switch back over to my black now, and we're just going to kind of start to create some, kind of blend all of this together as it were. So I'm going to start with this tree, and you'll see kind of how this, so this is just kind of that line work stage. Come through here, and we just kind of find some of these, you create a little bit of shadow on some of these sides of the trees, or the tree trunks. Create some 3D line where you just kind of create some very dark, heavy lines next to the thinner lines. All right. Maybe a couple of stripes as they come across here, a couple areas. Okay, connect that to the ground with a little bit of growies. And I'm going to create a little bit of shadow from the tree coming off this way, some shadows in that background. Use this black just to kind of blend things together just a little bit here and there. And then maybe that house is casting a little bit of shadow onto the ground. Okay, and then there's just some little growies and little things along here to add just a little bit of interest there. So come in here and maybe darken this up just a little bit here and there. And then maybe I've got, so this black just kind of starts to pull everything together. Use that for a little bit of topo line. hitting these trees. Well, I gotta remember to stay up here. Hopefully you guys have seen most of what I've been able to draw. So I'm just adding these details, right? Some very dark with my black pencil here, and this is what kind of starts to make it really pop. A few dots. Come in here and add the tree trunks. Okay, so that kind of all comes along. Sorry, just adding a little bit of color in this walkway, or not color, but it's just some of this black. Right. And then just I'm going to come back into the sky, just a little bit of darker blue, a couple of those lines, and maybe back into here, and just some of that variable line in these dark green color. I'm going to put a little bit more of this darker black over here too. Okay, there we go. So that's just kind of the way you build that up, and you kind of create this nice color rainbow type of a drawing using all different types of colors and really making kind of a very energetic, exciting type of a drawing. This isn't the type of a drawing that maybe I would use to show to a client, but it might be something that I'd use just to kind of get my creative juices kind of flowing and thinking about what things might look like, or you know, maybe just doing some crazy things that might create some ideas or thoughts that I wouldn't necessarily otherwise have. So it's kind of where we're at, and adding just a few finishing touches here in a couple of areas, and I'll call this done just really quick here. And just one more thing here, just up here on the house. I need to emphasize those corners just a little bit more. Maybe a couple of dots here or there. Just a really nice dark shadow on that side of the tree. Okay. All right, I'm going to call that good. So remember to always sign your work. And today is the 6th, 2020, and that took me about 38 minutes. Okay. All right, go ahead and do one more, or do your sketch like this. That'll be this assignment. And then the second assignment for color pencil is I'll post 2 other backgrounds, and you'll be able to do two other drawings similar to this, or just any way that you want to kind of practice using the colored pencils, mixing them, and kind of getting them all to blend together and create these energetic or kind of different types of drawings that you'll kind of want to do. So say earth tone, any type of an earth tone drawing. So, all right, thanks, and we'll see you again hopefully in class soon. Bye.